guys, it's Kat and welcome back to my booktube channel. Today is by far the most exciting video of the year, and that is every single book I read in 2022 and my ratings for them. I really started reading this year like in January, so this is basically my first full year of being a consistent reader. Also, this is my first year doing any sort of booktube content, and I started in September. So there's a huge chunk of the year that I didn't talk about anything. So I have my reading journal on my iPad, and I'm really just gonna go through every single book I read and rating, maybe talk about it a little bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started because this is going to be a long video. So starting with the month of January. So the first book I read this whole year was Verity, and I read that from January 5th to the 7th, and I gave it 5 stars. Verity was awesome. I loved it. My first Colleen Hoover book, obviously. It had been talked a lot on TikTok at the time, on Book Talk especially. I know it's still talked about, but I feel like it was super, super popular in January. I loved it. I think it's a little overrated. I don't think it's as people make it out to be, but a solid book. Next, from January 8th to the 10th, I read The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I think that's how you say it. And I gave that 4 stars. Really good thriller, kept me on my toes, had no clue what was gonna happen, so it was really great. Then from January 11th to the 12th, I read It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, and I gave that 5 stars. I know it's a controversial book and not everybody loves it. I really loved it. I read it very quickly. And then the last book that I read for the month of January was Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover, and I gave that 5 stars, and I read it from the 12th to the 13th. And Ugly Love is by far my favorite Colleen Hoover book. It's just amazing. I think it's great. It's another one that a lot of people don't like, but I love it. It was just remarkable. Moving into February, I started reading some hefty books. So first I read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover from the 11th to the 19th, and I gave that 3 stars. That's a very unpopular opinion, but I thought Reminders of Him was pretty mediocre. It just didn't really hit. It was a good story, but it was nothing compared to Ugly Love or It Ends With Us, in my opinion. And then second, I read House of Earth and Blood, and I read that from February 21st to March 2nd, and I gave that 5 stars. And that book was phenomenal. My first Sarah J. Maas book, my first fantasy book, and I wasn't really expecting to like it as much as I did. Obviously, it took me a while to get through, but I loved it. It was great. I don't know if I'd recommend it to people as the first fantasy book you should read, but it's definitely a book you should read at some point, and it is like 800 pages, so be warned. In March, I decided to continue with the fantasy theme, and I read The Cruel Prince from the 1st to the 12th, gave that 5 stars, and then I read The Wicked King from the 23rd to the 24th, and I gave that 5 stars as well. The Cruel Prince is a phenomenal series. I loved it. The whole thing I gave 5 stars, but The Wicked King, and then I'm going to talk about the 3rd book in the series here in a minute, were by far the best in the series, and I'm really excited for Holly Black's next book in that installment to come out, and it is going to be following the little brother, and I'm so excited. And then the 3rd book I read for March was Twilight, which was a reread for me, and I read it from the 23rd to the 31st. 5 stars. I love Twilight. It was more of just like a nostalgic thing. In April, I finished up the Crescent City duology. It's going to have more books, but currently it's just a duology. House of Sky and Breath, and I read that from April 2nd to the 12th, and I gave that 5 stars as well. And I also picked up Beach Read, and I DNF'd it. Then for May and June, I read nothing, which is really disappointing because I would love to see how many books I would be at if I hadn't stopped reading for 2 whole months. But you know what? It is what it is, and 2023 is going to be the year for me with reading. July, I started out with What a Strange Book to start out a month on after a huge reading slump. A book called Pew by Catherine Lacey. I read it from the 9th to the 13th of July, and I gave it 3 stars. Pretty solid book, very different than what I had read before. I definitely recommend it, but it wasn't anything crazy. Next, I read November 9th by Colleen Hoover from the 10th to the 14th, and I gave that 3 stars. Probably the worst Colleen Hoover book I've read. I just thought it was like stupid. I'm sorry, but like the concept of it is just really dumb to me. To suspend my disbelief with books, obviously I read fantasy books, but with that, it's just so far-fetched that I was like, this is just stupid, and all of these problems could be solved if people like would talk and also weren't complete idiots. Then I finished up the Cruel Prince series with Queen of Nothing, and I gave that 5 stars, and I read it from the 19th to the 23rd. And the final book I read for July, and with a banger, was A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I read that from the 25th to August 1st, and I gave it 4 stars. I'm sure you can guess at that point what I read for the month of August. Starting out with A Court of Mist and Fury, which I read from the 1st to the 16th, and I gave 5 stars. Then I read A Court of Wings and Ruin from the 17th to the 23rd, and I gave it 5 stars. A Court of Wings and Ruin is my favorite by far in the that's hard. It's tied for my favorite with the ACOTAR series. I just love it. I like the war concept of it. I know that not a lot of people like that, but I love the politics and war in books, so really loved it. Next, I read A Court of Frost and Starlight from the 24th to the 26th. I gave it 3 stars. Book sucked. Don't read it. It's pointless. There's literally no information in it that is necessary. 4th, I read Kiss the Sky by Becca and Krista Ritchie, and that was from the 26th to the 29th, and I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed that book. Thought it was really cute. And I really wanted to continue, or not continue, I guess I needed to start the Addicted series, and I just never picked it up. So that's definitely on my TBR going into 2023. And finishing off the month, I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo from the 29th to the 31st, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I thought it was a really, really great book. The beginning was super boring, but like the middle to the end was phenomenal, very well done, loved it. It's the only Taylor Jenkins Reid book I have read, but I'm interested to read more from her because I liked it so much. September, I really picked up the pace. I really picked up the pace. I started off reading Shatter Me, and I read that on September 1st. Gave it 3 stars. Shatter Me is a pretty mediocre book, but I heard a lot of good things about the series, so I was like, you know what? I need to start it. I need to see what this is about. Second, I picked up the novella Destroy Me, and I read that from the 1st to the 3rd. Gave it 5 stars. Third, I read Unravel Me from the 3rd to the 6th, and I gave it 5 stars. 4th, I read Fracture Me from the 6th, or on the 6th, and I gave it 2 stars because me and all my homies hate Adam. Sorry, is what it is. And then I put a pause on my Shatter Me reading, and I picked up 6 of Crows, and I read it from the 8th to the 12th. I have a whole video on my thoughts about 6 of Crows, and I will link that somewhere around here if you're interested in reading about, or if you're interested in hearing about my thoughts, because I think my thoughts vary pretty greatly from other people's, and I gave it 4 stars. 6th, I read The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket on the 12th, and I gave it 5 stars. That was a reread as well. Loved the series as a kid, and I'd like to reread the entire series going into 2023, just because it's very nostalgic for me, and I do think it's well written, and it is it's just a really good series. 7th, I picked up All Your Perfects by Colleen Hoover from the 12th to the 13th, and I gave it 4 stars. Make sure you check the trigger warnings on that book. It's a very sad book, but it was pretty good. Next, I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, and I read that on the 14th. Gave it 5 stars. That is probably my favorite thriller of the year. I just thought it was so well done, and it's I don't know. It was just really good. I loved it. 9th, I read If We Were Villains from the 15th to the 17th, and that is by, oh God, who wrote that book? M.L. Rio from the 15th to the 17th. And that is probably my favorite book for the year, one of my favorite books for the year. If you're gonna listen to me on anything, read that book. It's so good. It's like a thriller, romance, found family. It's like everything you could ever want. It's amazing. Next, I read The Push from the 18th to the 22nd, and I gave it 4 stars. Looking back, I'm probably gonna say it was 3 stars. It was pretty mediocre, but it was okay. 11th, I read Ignite Me, again part of the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi, on the 23rd to the 28th, and I gave that 4 stars. Okay, picking up with October, I started off reading Restore Me from the 1st to the 3rd, and I gave that 3 stars. That was once again part of the Shatter Me series. Second, I read Finley Donovan Is Killing It from the 4th to the 5th, and I gave that 4 stars. That's another one of my top recommendations for the year. I just thought it was really cute. Wasn't like the best book I've ever read, but it's definitely something I would recommend reading, especially for like a beach read, something to read on a plane, you know, one of those kind of books. Third, I read Shadow Me from the 5th to the 8th, and I gave it 3 stars. Fourth, I read Defy Me. Fourth, I read Defy Me from the 9th to the 12th, and I gave it 4 stars. Fourth, I read The Hen Who Dreamed She Could Fly. I gave that 5 stars. I read it on the 12th. It was adorable. The cutest book ever. Loved it. You've got to read it. It's also only like 100 pages. Sixth, I read Reveal Me from on the 14th, and I gave it 5 stars. Seventh, I read The Ex-Hex by Rachel Hawkins? By Erin Sterling, who is Rachel Hawkins, but I read The Ex-Hex and I gave it 3.5 stars. I read it from the 14th to the 18th. That was one where it was like really hyped up, super cute book, really great, like Halloween read, but it was just cheesy. Like it wasn't anything great. Then I read It Starts With Us, and I have a full video on that I'm gonna link. I gave it 5 stars though, and I read it the day it came out on October 18th. 9th, I read A Court of Silver Flames from the 20th to the 25th, and I gave it 5 stars. That is also tied for my favorite book of the year with All of Us Are Villain, or If We Were Villain, whatever. Ugh. A Court of Silver Flames is tied for my favorite book as well. Amazing, phenomenal. I'm so excited for more additions to the ACOTAR series. It's just, I love it. And then 10th, I started Go Hex Yourself, got 25% of the way through, and DNF'd it because it sucked. Great, we're getting to the end here. November, I started by reading Throne of Glass from the 29th of October to November 5th, and I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was meh. I also have a reading vlog on some of these books coming up, so I'm going to link those as I talk about them. I read Crown of Midnight from the 5th to the 10th and Heir of Fire from the 12th to the 16th, and both of those were 5 stars. Loved it. If you're going to read Throne of Glass, which is by Sarah J. Maas, I don't know if I mentioned that. The first book kind of sucks, but the second, third, and fourth, and like so on, love it. Then I read In a Holidays by Christina Lauren from the 17th to the 18th, gave it 4 stars. I read Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey from the 20th to the 23rd, and I gave it 1 star. And I read His and Hers by Alice Feeney on the 28th, and I gave it 4 stars. His and Hers is another one where it was a really good thriller, but really you have to check the trigger warnings because that one was pretty intense. So just be warned, but it was a good book. For December, I read 'Tis the Season for Revenge by Morgan Elizabeth. And these holiday books are one that I have a reading vlog on, so I'll put that up here. That one I gave, I think, 3 stars. Thought it was okay. Then I read Queen of Shadows, and I read Queen of Shadows between a few different books. So I read it from the 24th of November to the 7th of December. 5 stars, amazing, loved it. Once again, that isn't part of a reading vlog, just kidding. Then I read Never Lie by Frida McFadden on the 8th, and I gave it 4 stars, loved it. I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden shortly after, and I gave that 5 stars as well. Frida McFadden has written some amazing thrillers, so I highly recommend those, and both of those are on Kindle Unlimited. Next, I started the Mindfuck series, and I read the first 2 books, and I gave the first one 4 stars and the second one 4 stars. I'll continue with it. I just got distracted by other things, but it's really good, also on Kindle Unlimited. Then I read the most hyped up thriller of the year from what I've seen, which is The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I gave it 4 stars. Thought it was really good. I thought it was really good, but the ending was so like it was a twist, but the reason it was a twist, in my opinion, is because it was so far-fetched that obviously I didn't see it coming because it doesn't make sense. I just don't get it. So the ending was pretty poorly explained and poorly described on who did it and why they did it. So, but it was a really good story up until the end, honestly, which is usually not the case. Then I read Consider Me by Becca Mack, which is part of the Playing for Keeps series. This is the first sports romance I've ever read. I gave it 5 stars. It's a long romance. It's 500 pages. Yeah, 462. Also on Kindle Unlimited. I haven't felt the kind of joy that I felt from this book since reading a One Direction fan fiction when I was 12. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It's cute. It's also spicy, but it has a fan fiction like style to it, if you know what I mean, but like it's really good. And then the last book, which I'm almost done with, so I'm gonna go ahead and include it, which would be 54 books for the year, is the second book in the Playing for Keeps series, which is Play With Me by Becca Mack. And I can't give you a full rating right now because I'm not done, but as it stands, I'm thinking it will be a 5 stars as well. All right, guys, that is every single book I read in 2022 and my ratings for them. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this last half of the year with me on BookTube, and I'm really excited for 2023. I've got some really good ideas for videos I want to put out, and I want to be more consistent on here. And yeah, I'm just super excited. So let me know in the comments if there's anything that you guys specifically want me to do or any kind of videos you think that I should make. And I hope you guys have a great 2023, and I hope you had a great 2022, and I will talk to you guys soon.